Welcome back to Market View. This is our Enterprise Watch segment. Let's discuss now solutions over bottlenecks that have continued to cause frustration. Late payment of suppliers, a long-standing issue that has indeed caused an outcry in the country with a lot of concerns arising from the health sector. Our business journalist took it upon herself to go and have a very important conversation with the Minister for Finance, Honorable Neil Reichenberg. This conversation is going to give you clarity, first and foremost, on the procurement processes. Let's listen.
Honorable Minister, welcome to Market View. Thank you for making time to see us. We came to see you because of the concerns around the procurement processes, especially from the Ministry of Health. So we just want to understand, when does the Ministry of Finance get involved in the procurement processes of medicines?
So I think I must understand the Ministry of Finance does get involved at a few points during the whole procurement process. First of all, when any ministry wants to spend money, they need to inform the Ministry of Finance, we plan to spend this money. They ask for what you call a release. They will send a letter, normally within a week. We'll have responded and we'll release the budgets that they need. Especially the Ministry of Health, normally we manage it so it's like every quarter. A quarter of the budget is spent every quarter. The Ministry of Health, though, because of the need for medicines to be procured in the beginning of the year, normally release most of the budget already early in the year to try and assist them to buy medicines. After the release is done, the Ministry of Health then goes through the whole procurement process of buying the drugs, of going out to tender to buy the drugs. When they have finished the tender process is an internal process within the Ministry of Health. When they've finished that, though, they then come to tender board for final approval. They bring their whole documentation, the write-up of who they plan to buy it from. Tender board looks at that and then gives tender board approval for that. The tender board sit every week on Wednesday, and they don't have backlog of cases. They're on top of their cases every week. What's come that week, they look at, and they might decide, they might refer something back if something is not neat. Otherwise, they then approve in general for the work that's done. ESPRA has their functions. So the moment you're actually doing your procurement, you also need to announce to ESPRA that you need what you plan to buy, and then they will go through their process of possible advertising to see what they need to do. Keeping in mind that one can buy for a period of time. So one might need to go through a procurement process, but you can buy for 3 years. If you say you want this supplier to supply for 3 years, that's the contract, and once you've gone through the process, you then have a supplier that can continue supply and not need to go through the procurement process every year. It can be a multi-year contract that you can buy from. And then that means that you can then start buying the product or buy the medicines that you need. And once you have bought the medicines and it's time for payment and you have all the paperwork together that's been supplied, you submit that to Treasury. And like I've always said, that in Treasury we prioritize the Ministry of Health, and generally we pay on a weekly basis everything that is for medicine specifically. Mm-hmm. So as we sit here now, our cash flow is under strain at the moment, and we don't necessarily pay all the bills that are due at government, but the Ministry of Health bills we prioritize, we have for years, and we make sure that on a weekly basis we do pay what is due to the health sector.
So why does it seem like the Ministry of Finance is delaying the processing of payments for suppliers, especially those of the Ministry of Health?
Yeah, so just to emphasize, at the moment there is the process of supplies. Number one, I think the Ministry of Health, let's say they give an order for medicines, they will wait until the full order has been supplied. And sometimes if you received an order for 10 different kinds of medicines, you can supply some, but you can't supply all. They insist that you supply the whole order. So that sometimes does create delays. The processes are possibly cumbersome. At the moment, the procurement process overall is still let's call it an old-fashioned paperwork procurement process. So we do desperately need to move over to an e-procurement process. So as we speak, you'll have seen the newspapers already for a few weeks been running to do all the engagements to try and change our procurement legislation. We have IFMIS in the country. A team from Rwanda is actually helping us to do this. And at the moment, we are in the process of looking at our procurement process so that we can move from this paper-based system, which is cumbersome, to a much more streamlined electronic system.
Is there a way, Minister, to ensure that the procurement process is responsive to emerging needs and priorities? I'll make an example. Kudzingeka iPanado, kudzingeka umuthi thile esibhedlela, mhlambe isetshenzwe masinyane leyo ndzaba isheshe iphele, babhadaleke labo bo supplier.
Look, I think what we need to understand is the procurement process is cumbersome, but it also has all sorts of different options in it. You've got like emergency procurement. If the country's run out of medicines, it's definitely an emergency. And emergency procurement means that you can finish the whole procurement process in a month. At the moment, the Ministry of Health approached us as a Ministry of Finance, said they'd like to go for emergency procurement because they wanted to move to buy some medicines from South African wholesalers, which had a lot of stock of medicines and they could help them. We helped them straight away. Within a month, they were up and running. And as we speak, there's a lot of medicines now coming in from the South African wholesale companies. And that's what's actually saving the day at the moment in Eswatini. So even though the procurement process is cumbersome, there's avenues to be able to say, listen, there's a single source. Only this company in the world provides ARVs, for instance. Its point is going to tender because you know there's only one supplier. So you go for what you call a single source procurement request, which means there's no tender process. You just go for single source. You know who the supplier needs to be because they're the only ones producing it, and you then buy from them. So all those avenues are in the procurement legislation, and they do use them. The Ministry of Health is actually now quite strategically using these methods of procurement.
The issue of delayed payments for suppliers, Honorable Minister, has been long-standing. I think I came here, we talked about it at some point where you said there are some loans that the ministry is working on to pay not only suppliers for the Ministry of Health, but suppliers in general. What can you say to Eswatini? What can you say to these suppliers in terms of ensuring that they are paid on time?
Okay, so I think let's just separate the matters. There's payment of suppliers where we do have a problem. Then there's payment of medicines, which we prioritize and we pay every week. So we handle these things very differently. So do we have a problem with paying suppliers? We do have a problem paying suppliers, and we need to get a cash flow injection to try and solve that. If one will recall, we did go for a loan from a Frexham Bank of 2 billion emalangeni to try and solve our arrears once and for all. The loan wasn't passed through the processes, so which means that we unfortunately still stuck with this around 2 billion emalangeni's arrears that we have now. So at the moment as we speak, the ministry is engaging with the World Bank, African Development Bank, the OPEC Fund and the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to loan money once again to try and deal with these arrears and to deal with outstanding bills. We sincerely believe that in a few months' time, with these loans, if these loans are all approved by Cabinet, Parliament and His Majesty, that we will be able to actually get on top of and actually get the cash flow to pay the suppliers once and for all. And then to put this matter behind us as a country, it'll be a lovely place for us as the Minister of Finance. I can promise you, if anyone's complaining, it's really awful as a Minister of Finance sitting with a stock of arrears. It's a terrible job trying to every day explain and trying to see what you can do to try and manage the situation. So we're desperate to try and get the matter solved properly.
As I'm about to let you go, Minister, what would you say, as a parting shot, what can you say to Eswatini regarding this issue?
I think it's just a matter of protecting our people. The people that work in the Ministry of Finance wake up every day to try and do the best they can to make sure people are paid. Have we had issues of corruption? We have had issues of corruption in the Ministry of Finance. But the beauty of us in the Ministry of Finance, and one can see there's now a case in the newspaper once again of people we've caught, but we catch people that are trying to commit any kind of corruption. And when we catch them, they get fired and they go to jail. As we had someone in Treasury, if you recall, about a year ago that we caught that was committing corruption. They're sitting in jail, if I'm not mistaken, at the moment for the crimes that they've committed. And the beauty of that, it shows that if you catch a person who's committing corruption and in a big department, if everyone in the department is committing corruption, then that means when that person goes to jail, they're going to be shouting and screaming, and they're going to be, explaining about everyone that's also committing corruption. The fact that we are dealing with corruption, Ministry of Finance, I think is a very good sign. And the fact that we do take people to jail every now and again for crimes that are committed proves that it's not the Ministry of Finance holistically that's got a problem here. I believe our officials, Ministry of Finance, we've got brilliant officials, and we've got people that dedicate themselves to working very hard. And so to see them constantly getting blamed for things that are outside of their control. It's just not fair, and it's not right on us as a ministry, because I can see on a day-to-day basis how people are really working overtime at the Treasury Department. They work overtime every day with never getting paid overtime, purely because of the cash flow crisis that we have, and they're trying to see what they can do to try and fix this. And then to get blamed for, for people dying or things like that, it's just not a fair statement to make on us as a ministry. And so for that reason, one takes offense at it, because I can see the efforts that are being done constantly to try and make sure that we do our best under the circumstances.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for joining us on the show. I've learned a few things today, that emergency procurement is allowed for medicine, and that procurement legislative changes are underway, as well as that medical supplies are prioritized every week for payment. Minister.
Yeah, that's the conversation between our business journalist Nelson Dlangamandla and Minister of Finance, Honorable Neil Reichenberg, on the procurement issue of medicine and the drug supplies, really. Let's go for a net break. All things market analysis with Sanela Sibia in discussion virtually after the break.